The truth is out there.
It is one of the world's greatest mysteries, Scotland's legendary Loch Ness Monster. So does the lake creature actually exist? Well, if you ask one man, he'll tell you it is in fact no myth.
Every day it's flaunted in front of your face.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads.
You just choose to ignore it.
Belief can be a powerful force. No one knows that better than the people who are sure they've seen Bigfoot.
Real accounts.
He says he knows who's playing mind games.
Rogue government officials that are sponsoring this, also corrupt business officials, and private citizens.
From real people.
Hundreds of people turned out tonight for the unveiling of a very controversial statue.
Yeah, it really is. The Satanic Temple of Detroit revealed the one-ton bronze statue.
It's time for you to take a swim.
I'm just excited to see my Lord and Savior Baphomet represented in such glorious Italian stone. I do hope his eyes gaze upon me, and that my allegiance is recognized.
In the dark waters.
The Dark Waters channel is for entertainment purposes only. Although information in these stories can be traced back to relevant and true sources, Dark Waters strongly discourages its viewers, listeners, and subscribers from visiting the site of incidents and encounters discussed or revealed on the show. In other words, we will not be held responsible if you are attacked by a dogman, molested by a Bigfoot, bitten by vampires, chased by chupacabras, abducted by aliens, accosted by the Men in Black, investigated or arrested by the local law enforcement, CIA, FBI, NSA, EPA, BLM, or another alphabet group, whether on U.S. soil or abroad. Thank you for tuning in, and enjoy the show.
I've been a realtor for the past 15 years. Got my start in San Diego. Made a shitload of money. After I made my goal of $3 million, my wife and I retired to a small town, 150 miles away from the U.S.-Mexican border. But I couldn't just give up my love of real estate. So I continued to take listings and sell properties. The only difference was that in this area, there were no beaches or high-rises. Here, there were nothing but broad swaths of land. And selling ranches is the name of the game. It took a while for me to get my first listing. I was a newbie in the area and people around here are not so trusting. But after 4 months of hanging out and a few political donations, I got my first listing. A 30-acre ranch that was bank-owned. Truthfully, I didn't need the money. I just loved the rush of working the deals. So when I got the information on this property, I was surprised. The place was damn near brand new. At least the house, I mean. It was built 5 years ago, and the property went into foreclosure 23 months after the permanent loan was put in place. So I'm thinking to myself, man, this should be an easy sale. And I decided to head up to the property to lay my eyes on it. I need to visualize myself selling this place. In order to get to the actual house itself, you had to turn off the highway onto this dirt road and travel a little less than a mile to get to the front gates. While on that dirt road, I realized that whoever built this house was a serious recluse. I mean, they must have wanted privacy. One of those off-the-grid types. There was no way I would have spent the type of money they did to live in such a desolate place. When I arrived at the front gate, I had to hop out and unlock it. This gate was massive, 9 feet tall, made of steel, and was beautiful. This family spared absolutely no expense on this house or this property. From the gate, I could see the house about 250 yards away. I drove right up to it, pulling up damn near at the front door. Typically, I do a walk around the property and take measurements. But there was a recent appraisal on a bank package, so luckily all I had to do was just go inside and see it for myself. Just as I was putting the key in the door, I heard what sounded like another vehicle coming up the road. Remember I told you about how desolate this place was? So I knew the only way somebody was coming down this road was they were headed to the property. I finally was able to see the vehicle. It was a cop car. The vehicle pulled in the gate, and it's this female officer. She parks, exits the vehicle, starts eyeballing my real estate sign on the side of my car, then starts to ask me what I'm up to. To be honest with you, this was a tense moment, because she had her hand on the weapon the whole time. It took a while for her to relax. Then she started telling me about the place. She said it was owned by a man named Kevin Shields and his family. They built the place as an off-grid location. Then she goes on to tell me about the underground bunkers and and all kind of other little crap that's associated with this property. It was during this conversation that I learned that Mr. Shields died from some kind of wild animal attack. He tried driving himself to the hospital and had a wreck on the roadway, flipping his vehicle over and dying. Then she goes on to tell me good luck with selling the place, and explains how there's lots of weird things that happen in the area. People are always reporting strange lights in the sky, hearing noises that sound like broken tornado sirens, and about these very large wolves. Diana, the officer, goes on to tell me that she was called out to the property one night when Mr. Shields was away on business. His wife and older sons were home alone. She said that when she arrived, they told her they thought a person was stalking the house, but whoever it was had run off. So she drove around the property in her vehicle to take a look around, and that's when she saw this huge wolf on all fours, walking a dried up creek bed that runs along the west side of the property. She said other officers had been called out as well and witnessed these same large wolves. At this point in time, I'm starting to get freaked out, and I want to change the subject. So I asked her if she wouldn't mind joining me as I did a walk around through the house. As I walked into the house, I realized that it was still furnished. I mean, this family clearly had just picked up and left in a hurry. There were still plates and dishes in the cabinets. And Diane, she looked disturbed as she walked around inside the house. At that point, I started getting the feeling there was way more to the story than I was being told. 20 or 30 minutes had passed, and then she said something real freaky. She said, "We need to be out of here by dark." And that's when I noticed this panicked look on her face. So I took her advice, and we left. The property sat on the market for 3 months before I got one phone call. And this call was from a man out of Texas. And this guy was weird. He was an oil man. Said he needed a place to prepare for the end of days. I mean, he seemed like a real smart fellow, but he thought the apocalypse was coming like next week. 2 days later, I found myself out at the property with this guy we'll call Big Tex. Now, normally, I like to show properties in the morning time, but this particular case, we were forced to do it around 4 p.m. because he came into town late. By 5:30, we had gotten through the house itself, and he still wanted to see the bunker and food storage area, and the barn that was towards the back of the property. I tried my best to get him to agree to start again in the morning, but he had plans to get back on a plane that night. Now, this property has no utilities turned on, so when the sun went down, we were just working with the headlights from my car and handheld flashlights. But luckily the sky was clear, and the moon provided good light. So we headed into the bunker and walked around a bit and then came out. I started getting that itchy feeling, like I can get this deal closed. So we were standing right in front of my car. I had the contract in my hand, $2.5 million at 6%. I'm talking about $150,000. If I can get Big Tex to sign on a dotted line, I get that money. And just as I handed him the pen, I hear this growl. I mean, this thing was loud and deep. Tex looks at me and said, "What the fuck was that?" Now, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, Diana was serious about these wolves. They got wolves out here. Then it growls again, but this time, the sound is coming from directly behind the vehicle. Tex and I jump in the vehicle and I start to pull off. And by the time I made a complete U-turn and headed back towards the front gate, Tex has damn near jumped out of the front seat of the car and into the back seat. Now, I didn't see anything at that moment, but based on his reaction, I floored it, getting up to about 55 miles an hour, headed back to the front gate. When I arrived at the gate, Tex's upper body was in the back seat and his feet and legs were still in the front seat, and he was screaming. I hopped out of the car and swung the left side of the gate open, and when I turned around, that's when I first laid my eyes on these creatures. Back about 150 yards away and moving towards us was what looked like an animal running on 2 legs. This motion was fluid. It wasn't labored at all. And this thing had a spring to its step, kind of like it was bouncing. For a few seconds I watched as this thing bounced back and forth, moving in my direction. Then I hopped back in the car and drove off, damn near ripping my bumper off as I hit the gate. Once we hit the highway, I found the gas station and pulled over. And I asked Tex if he was alright. But the look on this man's face let me know 2 things. Number 1, I wasn't getting this commission. And then he saw something so bad that it probably was going to scar him for the rest of his life. After a few seconds of silence, Tex told me that as I was turning the car, he looked out of the passenger side window, trying to see what made the noise. And this creature he describes as a giant wolf had his face pressed right up against the glass. And it moved as the vehicle turned and kept pace. He was locked eye to eye with this thing for the entire time. He said the eyes were this yellow color, with the largest black pupils he'd ever seen. And as it bared its teeth, its nose and snout wrinkled and saliva dripped from its mouth. He demanded I take him back to the hotel. I absolutely knew there was no way I was going to be able to sell this property to him now. I showed it several other times after that and made sure that I did it in the daytime, and I've never seen those creatures again. However, another realtor went out to the property at night against my advice, and I'll share her story with you the next time.